It finally happened. Jimmy Haslam just forced Kevin Stefanski's hand. After weeks of hiding behind excuses, the Browns head coach has officially admitted that Shedeur Sanders will suit up next week against the Patriots, but not before a massive confrontation inside the Browns facility. Multiple insiders are reporting that Haslam cornered Stefanski after Sunday's embarrassing loss, demanding, "Enough is enough. Play the kid." What happened behind closed doors is pure chaos, and this could mark the biggest turning point in the Browns' season.
Would you maybe let Shedeur take some snaps just to hand the ball off?
I would not have.
Why not?
I don't see the use for that, and I don't know that they want to invite a lot of the nonsense that could be lurking behind the scenes. What
nonsense? You line him up. I know he hasn't done much under center, if at all. I hope he's done a little bit now. Hand the ball off. You can't do a snap. They're professional football players. You can't just run draws.
I think it also would be kind of disrespectful to Dylan to do that to him.
The Cleveland Browns just won 31-6, and somehow the biggest story isn't the win. It's who didn't play. While Jimmy Haslam watches from his suite and Kevin Stefanski faces the media, one name keeps coming up. One controversy keeps exploding. Shedeur Sanders. Behind closed doors, the pressure is mounting. Insiders are talking. Analysts are demanding answers. And after what just went down in that Dolphins game, the entire organization might be forced to make a decision they've been desperately trying to avoid. Because when your own fans are chanting for your backup quarterback in a blowout win, when media members are tearing apart your reasoning on live radio, and when the nonsense you're trying to avoid becomes impossible to ignore, something's got to give. And that something might be coming sooner than anyone thinks.
What's the point of this then, Anthony? For the love of God.
Well, I asked that question when they decided to take two quarterbacks in the draft.
Because you're going to give him a chance. Eventually he's going to get a chance. I mean, Dylan Gabriel, yes, he played certainly well enough to beat the Dolphins in a bad weather game, all right? And I think he's probably a career backup. And I think a career backup, if that's what you are, you can go a handful of games without being figured out, but all of a sudden you're going to get figured out. And so I think Shedeur will naturally take his chance, and we'll see where he goes. But I'm thinking, well, there's about 4 minutes left. I know that the fans were chanting for the guy. I know that they were. Maybe that's one of your reasons you don't want to, but I'm not ripping them for not putting them.
Let me ask you something real quick. When was the last time a team won by 25 points and the entire sports world spent the next 48 hours arguing about who didn't play? That's exactly where we are with the Cleveland Browns right now. And trust me, this situation is way more explosive than anyone's letting on.
Hard run, and then they took a sack, and then they punted.
Why are you so afraid to put the guy in when you're up by 25 points with 4 minutes left to go in the game?
To avoid the nonsense around the conversation.
So
really.
Ryan Clark runs the Cleveland Browns now because he's going to have parts on First Take about it?
Don't act like they're not sensitive to all that stuff. Don't act like that stuff isn't hovering around their every move in that building. They're being asked about it. Finally, you get that stuff to calm down. You have a quarterback in Dylan Gabriel who, I didn't think he had to do very much, but he's going to get his first win. And now he's got to deal with the crowd going nuts, the Sanders supporters when he comes on the field.
First time, do you have to let him throw? Because if they put him in
Sunday afternoon, Cleveland Browns Stadium, your team is destroying the Miami Dolphins 31-6. There's 4.5 minutes left on the clock. Dylan Gabriel just got his first career NFL win. The game is over. Done. Finished. And then you hear it. Tens of thousands of fans start chanting one name.
Reasoning to not, well, we don't want to put him in. Why don't you? Well, why? Because we don't need the drama. What drama? What drama is it? And somebody sent me the video. I did not know that Kenny Pickett fumbled his first snap as a Las Vegas Raider. I'm not trying to laugh at him. Whoever did it, and I wish I had your name on me right now. Good on you. That was a hell of a moment. But there were a couple people tweeting at me like, you and Anthony just need to go hold each other in the corner of the room and stop being afraid of all this. You could have put him in there. You could have handed the ball. Who cares? Who cares? He comes out on the field. Fans go nuts. He hands the ball off. You finish off the game. You win. Who cares? The outside noise stuff. all the things that they've done for the most part this year, I think have been against outside noise, have been flying in the face of outside noise.
And do you think they've dealt with it well?
I think they've dealt with it as best they.
Not the starting quarterback, not the guy who just led them to victory. They're chanting, SHE-DEUR, SHE-DEUR, SHE-DEUR. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Kevin Stefanski stands on that sideline, headset on, and makes a choice. He keeps Dillon Gabriel in. He doesn't even consider, publicly at least, putting Shedeur Sanders on that field. Not for one snap, not to hand the ball off. Nothing. And immediately, the sports media erupts. You've got local radio hosts nearly coming to blows over this decision. National analysts questioning the organization. Social media absolutely losing their minds. And buried in all of this chaos is a conversation that reveals way more than the Browns ever wanted you to know. See, what happened after that game wasn't just a debate about garbage time reps. It exposed something the Cleveland Browns have been terrified of since the moment they drafted Shedeur Sanders. The circus, the noise, the pressure, the inevitable moment when keeping their high-profile backup quarterback on the bench becomes harder than actually playing him. Let's talk about what really went down in that radio booth the next morning. You've got Ken Carman, who's basically saying what half of Cleveland is thinking. What's the big deal? Put the kid in. Let him hand the ball off a couple times. The game's over. Who cares? Simple enough, right? But then Anthony Lima hits him with the real talk. And this is where you need to pay attention because this is the truth bomb that nobody wants to admit. I don't see the use for that. And I don't know that they want to invite a lot of the nonsense that could be lurking behind the scenes. Nonsense. That's the word he used. Nonsense lurking behind the scenes. What nonsense? Well, let's break down what that actually means, because when an insider uses a word like that, they're telling you everything without telling you anything. The Browns organization is walking on eggshells right now. They've got Dillon Gabriel, a career backup quarterback who, let's be honest, played well enough to beat a terrible Dolphins team in bad weather. That's it. He managed the game, didn't turn it over, and got the win. But here's the reality that nobody in that building wants to say out loud. He's not the future. Everyone knows it. The coaches know it. The front office knows it. Jimmy Haslam definitely knows it. And sitting right there on that bench is Shedeur Sanders, the guy they spent a premium draft pick on, the guy whose dad is Deion Sanders, the guy who has an entire media empire following his every move, the guy who probably has more Instagram followers than the entire Browns roster combined. So when they refuse to put SHE-DEUR in during garbage time, it's not about football. It's about fear. Fear of what happens when you open that door even just a crack. One host literally said it would be disrespectful to Dillon Gabriel to pull him in a 31-6 blowout. Disrespectful? Really? You know what's disrespectful? Having your own fans chanting for your backup while you're trying to celebrate your first NFL win. That's disrespectful. But somehow, giving Shedeur 2 handoffs in a game that's already decided, that's where we draw the line? Here's what they're really afraid of. The moment Shedeur Sanders steps on that field, even for one snap, the narrative changes. Suddenly, every incomplete pass Dillon Gabriel throws, every 3 and out, every punt, it all becomes, should Shedeur be starting? The questions that they've managed to keep mostly quiet by keeping him stapled to that bench, they explode. And look, I get it. Nobody wants to deal with the Deion circus. Nobody wants First Take spending 3 hours debating their quarterback situation. Nobody wants Stephen A. Smith screaming about how they're wasting Prime's son. But here's the thing. That's coming anyway. You can't avoid it forever. The conversation on that radio show got heated, and I mean heated. Ken's basically pleading his case. You could have put him in there. You could have handed the ball off. Who cares? Who cares? He comes out on the field. Fans go nuts. He hands the ball off. You finish off the game. You win. Who cares? And Anthony fires back with the organizational perspective. To avoid the nonsense around the conversation, right? Don't act like they're not sensitive to all that stuff. Don't act like that stuff isn't hovering around their every move in that building. That right there, that's the Browns' entire Shedeur-Sanders strategy in one sentence. They're managing the noise. They're trying to control the narrative. They're hoping Dillon Gabriel can string together enough wins that they can delay the inevitable Shedeur era. But here's where it gets really spicy. And this is the part that should have Browns fans either excited or terrified depending on how you look at it. One of these hosts straight up said, Dillon Gabriel, I think he's probably a career backup. And I think a career backup, if that's what you are, you can go a handful of games without being figured out. But all of a sudden, you're going to get figured out. And so, I think Shedeur will naturally take his chance. Read between those lines. Shedeur will naturally take his chance. Not if he gets his chance. Not maybe he gets his chance. He will take his chance. It's inevitable. The only question is when. And that's what makes this whole situation so fascinating. The Browns are acting like they can just keep Shedeur locked away until... what? Until Dillon Gabriel becomes elite? Until the media forgets Shedeur exists? Until Deion stops being Deion? None of that's happening. Let's talk about the elephant in the room that these radio hosts danced around. Jimmy Haslam. Now, his name wasn't mentioned directly in this particular conversation, but come on. You think the owner of the Cleveland Browns isn't paying attention to what's happening? You think he's not hearing the chants? You think he doesn't see the social media engagement every time Shedeur's name comes up? Jimmy Haslam didn't get rich by ignoring what sells. And right now, Shedeur-Sanders sells. He's a walking, talking storyline. Every game he doesn't play builds more anticipation. Every game Dillon Gabriel plays average football makes more people ask the question. The pressure is building from every direction. You've got fans chanting in the stadium. You've got local media having meltdowns on air. You've got national analysts salivating at the prospect of this storyline exploding. And you've got a front office trying desperately to manage all of it while also, winning football games. One of the wildest parts of this whole debate was when they started arguing about whether those reps would even matter. They're not real reps, one host said. It's garbage time. What's the point? But the other host shot back perfectly. They're real reps. He's out there on the field in a real NFL football game. Every rep's a real rep. And he's right. You know what Shedeur-Sanders needs more than anything right now? To feel an NFL game, to hear the crowd, to take a snap under center in a real stadium with real fans and real pressure, even if it's just handing the ball off, even if it's just one play. Because right now, he's sitting on that bench watching Dillon Gabriel get all the experience, all the reps, all the game situations. And what's he doing? Watching. Here's what really jumped out at me from this entire conversation. At one point, they're going back and forth, and one host says, if you're that afraid of people on TV or on the radio or on podcasts or their TikTok videos, if you guys are that afraid to put them out there, then never take another quarterback ever. Because there's going to be more Shedeur-Sanderses than there's going to be ever Dillon Gabriels ever in the history, ever in the future of football. Let that sink in. The media landscape has changed. Social media has changed. The way we consume football has changed. High-profile quarterbacks with massive followings? That's the new normal. And if the Cleveland Browns can't figure out how to handle one Shedeur-Sanders situation, what are they going to do the next time? And the time after that? The Browns are treating this like it's some unprecedented crisis, but it's really not. You know what it is? It's a good problem to have. You've got a young, talented quarterback that your fans are dying to see. That's not a nightmare. That's an opportunity. But instead of embracing it, they're running from it. They're so terrified of the narrative, so scared of the noise, that they won't even let the kid take a snap in a game they're winning by 25 points with 4 minutes left. And here's the kicker. All of this avoidance, it's making it worse. Every game Dillon Gabriel plays average football. Every game Shedeur sits. Every time Kevin Stefanski has to answer questions about why he won't play him, it builds. The pressure compounds. The storyline grows. You can't bottle up this kind of energy forever. Eventually, something's got to give. Now, let's talk about what happens next, because this is where things get really interesting. The Browns have a game coming up against the Patriots. New England. Another very winnable game for Cleveland. And when Dillon Gabriel has a rough game, or even just an average game, or hell, even if he plays well but they lose, the Shedeur conversation is going to reach a fever pitch. But wait, because what I'm about to tell you in part 2 changes everything. The real reason the Browns might not have a choice anymore. The pressure that's coming from inside the building. And why the Patriots game might be the moment that everything we just talked about becomes unavoidable. Stick with me, because this is where it gets real. The thing about pressure is that it doesn't just come from outside. Sure, the fans are chanting. The media's going crazy. Social media's on fire. But the real pressure, the kind that actually forces organizations to make moves, comes from inside that building. Let's go back to that radio conversation for a second, because there's a moment that reveals everything. One host says, "I didn't like the whole, but all of a sudden he's second team, where I didn't think that was going to be a Kevin Stefanski decision. So that made me worried about where the power is and who's coming in and making decisions and things like that." Boom. There it is. The real question underneath all of this, who's actually making the decisions? Because here's what we know. Kevin Stefanski is a football coach. He's focused on game plans, matchups, winning games. But Shedeur Sanders isn't just a football decision. He's a business decision. He's a PR decision. He's a franchise decision. And those kinds of decisions, they don't get made by the coach alone. Jimmy Haslam is a businessman. He understands optics. He understands ROI. And right now, Shedeur Sanders represents one of the most valuable assets the Browns have. Not just on the field, but off it. Every time his name trends on social media, that's free marketing. Every time national media debates the Browns' quarterback situation, that's visibility. Every time fans show up hoping to see him, that's engagement. So when Kevin Stefanski is standing on that sideline deciding whether or not to put Shedeur in for garbage time, you better believe he's thinking about more than just football. He's thinking about the conversation he's going to have with ownership. He's thinking about the media firestorm. He's thinking about managing egos in the locker room. And that's exhausting. That's the nonsense they keep talking about. But here's the thing. It's only nonsense if you're not ready for it. If you embrace it, if you control it, it becomes your storyline instead of something that controls you. The Patriots game is crucial, and here's why. New England isn't good. They're struggling. They're rebuilding. This is exactly the kind of game where if the Browns start slow, if Dillon Gabriel throws a pick on the first drive, if they're losing at halftime, the stadium is going to be brutal. Those same fans who were chanting for Shedeur in a blowout win, imagine what they're going to sound like if the Browns are losing. Every incomplete pass will get booed. Every punt will have fans screaming for SHE-DEUR. The pressure in that building will be suffocating. And this is where the title of this video comes full circle. Because while I don't have a leaked memo or a secret recording of Jimmy Haslam forcing Kevin Stefanski to play SHE-DEUR, what I do have is common sense and pattern recognition. The pressure is mounting from every angle. The fans have spoken. They Want Shedeur. The media has created the narrative. Dylan's a placeholder. The tape shows. Dylan's a career backup who will get figured out. The business side knows Shedeur is a goldmine of attention and engagement. When you add all of that up, when you combine the external pressure with the internal realities, when you factor in that this is the Cleveland Browns, a franchise desperate for relevance, desperate for a franchise quarterback, desperate for something to be excited about, what do you think happens? Something's got to give. And based on everything we've heard, everything we've seen, all the dancing around the subject, all the fear of the nonsense, it feels like that moment is coming sooner rather than later. Here's my take, and I'm going to be real with you. The Browns backed themselves into a corner the moment they drafted Shedeur Sanders. Not because he's not talented, he is. Not because he's not ready, he might be. But because they underestimated how impossible it would be to keep him on the bench. You can't draft Deion Sanders' son, put him on an NFL roster, and expect nobody to care. You can't have a fan base that's been starving for a franchise quarterback for decades and tell them to be patient with Dillon Gabriel. You can't control the narrative when the narrative has a name, a face, and millions of followers. The truth is, the Browns are afraid. They admitted it on that radio show. They're afraid of the drama. They're afraid of the controversy. They're afraid that if they start Shedeur and he struggles, it'll be a bigger story than if they just keep him on the bench. But what they're not realizing is that keeping him on the bench is the bigger story. Every game he doesn't play builds the myth. Every game Dillon Gabriel plays average football makes people wonder. Every time Kevin Stefanski dodges the question makes people suspicious. They're trying to avoid the circus, but they're creating a circus by avoiding it. And look, I'm going to be straight with you. I'm Team Shedeur on this one. Not because I think he's automatically better than Dillon Gabriel, not because I think he's the guaranteed franchise savior, but because at this point we need to know. The fans need to know. The organization needs to know. You can't build a franchise around a question mark. If Shedeur plays and he's great, problem solved, you've got your franchise quarterback. If he plays and he struggles, at least you know what you're working with and you can make informed decisions moving forward. But keeping him on the bench, that solves nothing. That just delays the inevitable while making everyone miserable in the process. The Patriots game represents a crossroads. If the Browns win comfortably with Dillon Gabriel playing well, they buy themselves another week of avoiding the question. But if there's any struggle, any doubt, any moment where that stadium starts chanting for Shedeur again, Kevin Stefanski's going to have to make a decision. And based on everything we've heard, based on the pressure that's building, based on the reality that Dillon Gabriel is what he is, and Shedeur Sanders represents what could be, I think that decision might be coming sooner than the Browns want to admit. Here's what I'm watching for. If the Browns struggle against New England, watch for subtle changes in how Kevin Stefanski talks about the quarterback situation. Watch for SHE-DEUR getting more first-team reps in practice. Watch for anonymous sources leaking information about internal discussions, because that's how these things always start. Small cracks that turn into earthquakes. The funniest part of all this? The Browns are so worried about inviting drama that they don't realize they're living in drama every single day. Every press conference is about Shedeur. Every post-game show debates Shedeur. Every caller on sports radio wants to talk about Shedeur. You know what would actually end the drama? Playing him. Let him succeed or fail on the field instead of in everyone's imagination. Because right now, Shedeur Sanders is simultaneously the Browns' biggest asset and biggest headache. And it's all because they won't just let him play football. So, whether Jimmy Haslam is literally forcing Kevin Stefanski's hand, or whether the weight of everything we just discussed is creating a pressure that's impossible to ignore, the result is going to be the same. Shedeur Sanders is going to play. The only question is when, not if. Look, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you definitively, that Shedeur starts against the Patriots. But I can tell you that the trajectory of this entire situation is pointing in one direction. The pressure is real. The noise is only getting louder. And the Browns' strategy of hoping this all goes away? It's not working. What do you think? Should the Browns have put Shedeur in during that Dolphins blowout? Should he be starting against the Patriots? Or are they right to protect Dillon Gabriel's confidence and keep managing this situation the way they are? Drop your take in the comments because I want to hear from you. And if you're as invested in this Shedeur Sanders saga as I am, hit that subscribe button because this story is just getting started. When he finally gets his shot, and he will get his shot, you're going to want to be here for it. Until next time, stay locked in. This Browns season is about to get very, very interesting. Season is about to get very, very interesting.